Hello everyone and welcome back to TSW2. Today we are on the Nahverkehr Dresden route, and first thing, I'll apologise in advance in case I apologise in advance for if I end up getting any German pronunciations wrong, as I'm not an expert on German pronunciation, and unfortunately I can't speak German. Right, hope I got that's good, the destination display is set correctly. But no, this is the DB BR442 or Talent 2, and yeah, we are starting off from Dresden Hauptbahnhof today, and we're going about 52 kilometres to Riesa, and we'll be calling at least, I've got the list out now and I'll just try to count the number of stations. We're calling it Dresden-Mitte, Dresden-Neustadt, Radebeul Ost, Coswig, Weinboehla, Niederau, Priestewitz, Nuenchritz, Glaubitz and Riesa. And before I do anything else, I'll close the doors. Why it takes longer to close them than it does on other Talent 2 variants. Yeah, well. And we are off. Don't really want to hang around with these sorts of timetables. Actually, that reminds me, if I can get out over there in time, I have absolutely... What on earth? Did I just hear the elephants make a noise? They're just static models, they're not doing anything. But yeah, for the life of me, I don't understand why we've got this little bit of... I don't know if you can call it scenery, but I don't know why we've got this thing with... I don't know why we've got that thing with the elephants there. I mean, I would assume Dresden... I don't hardly know anything about Dresden, but I would assume it's got a zoo. Never mind. So, yeah, Nahverkehr Dresden is, in my opinion, one of the best German routes in TSW, and it's not necessarily because of the length of the route, which could certainly be improved, especially if they actually extended it all the way to Leipzig, or at the very least included the Dresden Flughafen branch. But the reason I like this route is mainly because of or more often than not, you'll find a very busy timetable with loads of AI trains running around. Like, if you spend about like 20 minutes at something like Dresden-Neustadt, then you'll get at least 10 trains if you're lucky. The station that we're passing on the right there is Dresden-Freiburgerstrasse, which is only served by S-Bahn Dresden S1 and S2 trains, and the S1 is the service that goes to Meissen-Trieberstal, and S2 is the one to Dresden Flughafen. Hello, there's a crane. I see a lot of those sorts of cranes around Tauranga at the moment because there's quite a lot of construction going on. Okay, can't accelerate too far, of course, especially since we have to slow down. Yeah, Dresden-Mitte is served by these regional trains like RE50 here, as well as things like obviously the S-Bahn, and then Dresden-Neustadt is served by just about everything. Like, if you go there, to watch trains, you can probably see like a DB BR141 on an intercity run, or an ICE 3M on like a Frankfurt to Dresden service. And a decent enough stop at Dresden-Mitte. Let's have a quick look on the platform. And I do apologise for the random lag. I'm not sure what's causing it, and I can't really do anything about it. Although I think I can theoretically restart the computer, but that would just be very tedious. So from what I understand, Nahverkehr Dresden is a remake of an old train simulator, well, I say old, like of a fairly recent train simulator route, which I'm pretty sure was called something like Bahnstrecke Riesa to Dresden, if I'm not mistaken. But from what I gather, that route, the old train simulator route, actually took a slightly different, well, actually included a different route between Dresden and Coswig. Whereas I think this TSW version includes the section that goes via Dresden-Neustadt. I'm not sure why, but I think it was a good choice on Dovetail's part, because as we'll see a little bit later on, Dresden-Neustadt is actually a very nice station. Now I don't know what the name of this bridge is, or what river it is, but either way, it certainly makes for a good scene for getting screenshots of trains. Thus, if anything, it kind of reminds me of the, what is it, I think it's Grosvenor Bridge across the River Thames, not long after leaving London Victoria, which of course you see on the London commuter route, like the Southern 377 and Gatwick 387, and an old signal box on the left. Here we are, arriving at Dresden-Neustadt. I think those two platforms on our left are the ones for the intercity trains. Quite often when you come here to watch trains in TSW, you'll also see some like MRCE or DB locomotives hauling freight. And another successful stop. And if memory serves, those two platforms on the far side, the one like 1 and 2, or is that eins and zwei in German? Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I know how to count to, at the very least, count to 8 in German. If I'm not mistaken, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Again, please do correct me if I'm wrong, because frankly because as I said earlier, I cannot speak German. But funny thing is, I didn't go on like any online course to learn how to count from 1 to 8 in German. Instead, I think it was from listening to the automatic announcements that you get on the Frankfurt U-Bahn route and train simulator, because obviously they nearly all the station announcements are in German, but there are some stations on lines U4 and U5 that also have English announcements. Hello, there's just about saw it. There's an S-Bahn S1 service with what looks like a DB BR442 on the point. And the station that we're about to pass now is Dresden Bischofsplatz. What was I saying about freight trains? And yeah, if memory serves, the MRCE BR185/5 that we just saw does come with this route, but it's technically copied and pasted over from Rhein-Ruhr Osten, which is the Wuppertal to Hagen route. That's another one that I quite like, even though it's pretty short. Okay, so now the speed limit's gone up to 160 kilometres an hour, so we can pretty much floor it for a little while. Next stop is Radebeul Ost, or is it Radebeul Ost? I know that when you see like EU in there, like a German word, that's like OI. As I said, Dresden-Neustadt. Hello, there's a nice 3M. And speaking of which, I actually recently made a video in Train Simulator showing like the evolution of the ice trains. And if I remember, I'll put up a card that'll take you to that video in the top right corner. I don't know what that station was there, but that would have been one of the S-Bahn stations. It's like the Schnellfahrstrecke Köln to Aachen route, where for most of the way you're running, unless you're actually driving one of the S-Bahn S19 services, you will just speed past a whole load of these small commuter stations. And of course Radebeul Ost is also served by the S-Bahn S1 services to and from Meißen-Trieberstal, and interestingly, it's the only station between Dresden-Neustadt and Coswig that's also served by these regional trains. And I would nip outside to check what that station's name was, but I'm not going to, because I'm trying to concentrate on slowing down to this 50km speed limit in time. And that will of course be for a crossover, which we'll need to go through in order to access the platforms at Radebeul Ost. What's curious about this station is that there's actually some narrow gauge lines here, and I do know that there are some very famous narrow gauge steam locomotives in Germany. I'm going to see if I can get a shot of the trains on the crossover. Yeah, look, there's the narrow gauge lines. I'll show you them properly when we stop the train. Oh, I hope that didn't turn out too bad. Hello, that looks like another S-Bahn train on the other line. Must have been waiting for us to go through the crossover. Actually, that looks like another BR442. But that version also comes with this route, but if memory serves, that engine made its debut appearance in TSW as part of the Main Spessartbahn route, which is Aschaffenburg to Gemünden. And again, that's another one of my favourite German routes, because I just really like the I wouldn't say steep, but just the really winding and twisty and turny nature of the railway in that part of Germany. It really does remind me of the Semmeringbahn in Austria. Speaking of which, Dovetail, if you're watching, please consider making Austrian routes for TSW, not just remakes of ones that we've already seen in Train Simulator, like again, as I say, the Semmeringbahn, but also the Mittenwaldbahn, but like entirely new routes. Like, it could feature. I wouldn't mind seeing Vienna in TSW. And if I'm not mistaken, Vienna is the capital of Austria. And of course, in the case of Germany, the capital is Berlin. Speaking of Berlin, recently I was watching a video from, I think David Frankel was his name. And it was a video where he was filming some trains at Berlin Hauptbahnhof, which, obviously the modern one, that I think was finished in about 2006. Either way, it's one of the most, architecturally speaking, it's one of the most fascinating stations in all of Germany, because like all the ice trains, I think their platforms are underground, but platforms for regional services and a lot of the S-Bahn lines, they're all above ground. And incidentally, that video did also featured a Talent 2. And if memory serves, it was one of the 4-car variants. Obviously, what we've got with the Dresden to Riesa route is a 3-car variant. And seeing David's video about Berlin Hauptbahnhof essentially got me looking into the Berlin routes that we've got in Train Simulator, because I think quite a few years ago there was Berlin to Wittenberg, but more recently I think that route was extended and now continues all the way to Leipzig. Just saw the narrow gauge line curving off to the right there. And from what I've seen in like some of the workshop scenarios, although I haven't downloaded them because I don't have the route, there are some parts of Berlin to Leipzig that have actually been remade as part of the rapid transit route in TSW, which is another route I kind of enjoy, especially like when you do like a train spotting video in the Leipzig city tunnel, because that section between I think was it Leipzig MDR and Leipzig Hauptbahnhof, the underground platforms at Leipzig Hauptbahnhof, that little section through the city tunnel is by far the busiest part of the busiest section of that route, because in TSW with the recent rapid transit, well, the semi-recent rapid transit update, Dovetail added timetable services to represent lines S6 and S1, or was it S1 and S6 in German. So in that game, you'll see, or on that route, you'll see the silver 3-car Talent 2s on the S1 and S6, and you'll also see them occasionally running the S2, but mainly in TSW you will see the DB BR442 or Blink 182 if you want to try and be funny, on the S2 services, which curiously in the game they only go as far south as Leipzig Konowitz. Hello, we've got that score there. That's the number of a preserved American steam locomotive, Southern Pacific 4460. And yeah, this time, or in this video, I am actually trying to Kutschenbroder. Once again, I probably butchered that name, unintentionally, mind. I don't go out of my way to blatantly mispronounce these foreign place names. What was I saying earlier? Yeah, something about rapid transit. Yeah, the other day I started watching a video about trains at Leipzig Nord in real life, but I honestly slowly lost interest in this as I went on. If anything, I prefer to watch real life videos from stations in the Leipzig city tunnel, especially Leipzig Markt. Correct me if any German speakers are watching, like German people or foreigners who can't speak German, if any of you are watching, is Markt the German word for market? Okay, you see we've got yellow signals. What that's about. Either way, I'm slowing down to the 60k speed limit. I remember when you drive on a lot of German routes in Train Simulator, I guess one example could be München to Garmisch-Partenkirchen. Quite often the speed limit changes are not marked on the HUD, so they kind of catch you off guard. And I think in those instances you really do have to be looking up at the signals, because I don't know too much about the German signalling, but what I do know is that quite often the signals will show like a white or yellow number in them, like obviously 4 or 6, and what you do is multiply that number by 10 to get the new speed limit. And even though the speed limit's gone back up to, I think that's 100 kilometers per hour, I'm not going to even attempt to floor it again, especially since we are approaching a station. And of course this is Coswig. This is a pretty important station from what I've seen, because it's served by both regional and S-Bahn trains. And as you saw earlier, speaking of which, is that S-Bahn or do I? Yes, I will check. No, that was, I just caught a glimpse of that. That was an S1 service coming back from Meissen and going to Bad. I think it said Bad Schondau. yeah, as well as the as well as the S-Bahn trains, the station's also served by RE50 and RB31, which are both regional trains. RB31 is the service that takes that alternative route between here and Dresden, which I think is the one that was on the old train simulator version. Excuse me, I just had to clear my throat. Let's have a look through the interior. Yeah, I can just imagine like being a passenger on a German train in real life, because from what I've seen, this country, or like from what I've seen in Train World and Train Simulator in real life, Germany has pretty good coverage with passenger trains. Dad said it was because their economy is so large and successful, I would assume. And by contrast, New Zealand hardly has any passenger trains. What's that? No, it's a BR143 with some car transporting wagons. That can make for a good screenshot, methinks. That's the point. Recently I drove the BR143 on the Duisburg to Bochum route, and if I can and if I remember, I will put up that other card in the top right corner so you can go check out that video if you like. It was the first TSW video I did with commentary. Go figure. And suffice to say, this Talent 2, for me at least, is a lot easier to drive than the BR143. That's not to say the BR143 is a bad engine, of course. Just going back to that RB31 service I just mentioned a minute ago. When I first saw that service appearing in from the list of scheduled services you could drive in timetable mode, I thought it was just a shuttle run, like a brief shuttle running between Coswig and Grossenhain. But now I've since found out that it's not. Because I think one time when I tried doing a train spotting video at Dresden Freiburger Strasse, hello, why is the signal red? It's probably to make the scenario a bit more challenging. That's, as I said earlier, that's one of the things I really like about this. That line curving off to the left there, that's the Meissen branch, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But no, yeah, this Nahverkehr Dresden route is one of the best German routes in the game, just because of how much more lively and active the route is in terms of the amount of trains running on it. And excuse me. And going back to the whole thing with pronunciation, I do have a lot of respect for Germany and their people, and so as a result, I don't go out of my way to butcher the pronunciation. I do try to learn these things, and especially with the Frankfurt U-Bahn, that certainly helps me a lot with pronunciation. Especially since you would hear the German lady reading out the announcements, or recordings of a German lady reading out the announcements. And I think it's also the same person who reads out the English versions of the announcements for those, I think it's 6 stations at the western end of U4, which are Konstablerwache, Domräume, Willy-Brandt-Platz, Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof, Festhalle, Messe and Bockenheimer Warte. In other news, we're coming up on Weinboehla. And yeah, if memory serves, a lot of these stations past Coswig are fairly basic affairs. That score there, that's the 6060, I believe that's the number of a preserved Canadian steam locomotive. I think one of the U1F class engines, which they're like mostly really nice looking 482s or 484s, but their appearance is kind of ruined because of the ugly nose cone on the smoke box door. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, a lot of these stations between Coswig and Riesa are fairly basic affairs in the sense that they're just these simple dual side platforms. And is that? Yeah, that's a successful stop. A few seconds late, but that's hardly a problem. Of course, if you were late by about 10 seconds in Japan, that would be a very different story in terms of how things would go over for the driver. Actually, that's a point. Japan is another country I'd like to see represented in TSW. Although, if we were to get a Japanese route in the game, like, I don't know, one of the commuter lines around Tokyo, I wonder how Dovetail would go about, or any third-party developer, I wonder how they'd go with simulating the incredibly busy timetable that the Japanese railways are known for. Although, speaking of Asian railways, another system I wouldn't mind seeing in TSW is the Hong Kong NTR. Although I think if they were going to do that system, I can't imagine they'd be able to make the Disneyland Resort line because I dare say Disney would probably end up charging an insane amount of money for for licensing fees. Because that's the other thing, is that every train and locomotive that you get with a route or just an add-on or a locomotive add-on in TSW, they are all officially licensed by the real railway companies, and that's obviously a good thing in my eyes, because A, it makes the game much more realistic and you don't just have generic unbranded versions of these trains. And I just like the fact that Dovetail Games, from what I understand, they're not a particularly big video game development company. I mean, they're certainly not as big as like Rockstar or EA, or I guess even Bethesda. But I've just realised I mentioned 3 big development companies that, in their instance, in their cases, it doesn't take a lot to piss off a lot of people. But I guess with Dovetail, it's a bit more manageable. Either way, Dovetail still do some silly things sometimes. But yeah, I just like how Dovetail are able to, I guess, is collaborate the right word? I just like how they're able to get permission from these big railway companies like Amtrak in the United States, and of course Deutsche Bahn here in Germany, and who else? I guess Southern Trains in England, and obviously ScotRail in Scotland. Because obviously, if you go on the Cathcart Circle route and look at all the stations, I say all the stations without referencing Jeff and Vicky, or without intent to reference them. But if you go on the Cathcart Circle route in TSW, you will see that every station is full of ScotRail branding. Also, speaking of like real life branding, this variant of the Talent 2, are the doors closing? Yes, they are. Jolly good. This variant of the Talent 2 has got these extra logos that I don't think have got. They're obviously not Deutsche Bahn. I don't know what MDV is, but I'm pretty sure VVO isn't it like a kind of public transport agency in Dresden? I think I'll try to do a better departure shot at the next station, which is Priestewitz. And off they go. I always liked the motor sounds of the Talent 2s. Actually, one of the reasons why they're my personal favourite German electric train. And of course, one thing I always remember about these trains is actually quite fun. I find quite amusing is the fact that they've apparently got the nickname hamster cheeks, and I think that's to do with the way the front end is designed. I'm pretty sure it's designed to protect the driver in the event of a crash. It's kind of like those really ugly Hyundai Rotem cab cars that you see on Metrolink and Tri-Rail commuter trains in the US. Those things may be hideous, but they are designed to, mainly with the safety of the driver in mind. And this part of the route is probably the most scenic part of it, I think. It's probably the closest we'll get on this route to anything resembling the Semmering Bahn. Of course, the other thing is that a lot of this route just feels a lot, despite using modern motive power, a lot of it just feels a lot more old-fashioned than the other German routes I've seen in this game. Obviously, because this part of Germany was once East Germany, but I don't think I'll get into that whole situation. Just thoughts. Another fairly recent route, well, it's not really a route, but it's more of a recent add-on in TSW that was only released about 5 days ago, I think. It's the RHB Anniversary Collection, and it's something that Rivet Games have put out, yay, as like an add-on for the Arosa line. And ironically, the only new bit of rolling stock that's included is this really strange yellow observation coach. And in terms of locomotives, they just included reskins of, or like new liveries for the already existing GE 4/4 Mark II, which is the engine that already comes with the route. Although, frankly, I would rather have had the ABE 8/12 or Allegra EMU as part of the anniversary collection. Because even though I found like a game-breaking red signal glitch on the Arosa line, I still would have probably been more inclined to buy the anniversary collection if it had more than just the extra liveries for the old, or for the already existing engine, and yeah, added the Allegra. I wonder why the speed limit along here is 120. It's like the S-Bahn lines on the Hauptstrecke München to Augsburg route, where you're driving the BR423. I nearly said BR143 there, on the S3 services between München, Hackerbrücke and Mammendorf. Because on those tracks, those trains are limited to 120 kilometres per hour. Although I would have preferred to be able to go up to 130 at least, because when you're driving on that S-Bahn service, it really is difficult if you're not already experienced with the S-Bahn trains. And it's not helped by the fact that the BR423's brakes aren't that great. I've seen better brakes on obviously the Talent 2 here, as well as the BR422 that you get with Duisburg to Bochum and Wuppertal to Hagen. Although saying that, no, Wuppertal to Hagen came out before Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr. That's the other thing. I remember there's actually like a good few crossings along this section between Coswig and Riesa. If you take the slow lines via Priestewitz, as we're doing today, because Dovetail have also included the fast lines Although saying that, they're not that fast, because when you're on that on that diversion route, or on that diversional track with the BR101 on the intercity services, or it's like the ICE3M on the intercity express, even then you still can't go faster than 160 kilometers an hour on this whole route. And I'm pretty sure that in Germany especially, you do need to have special in-cab signalling, I believe, in order to, and on a specially modified section of track, in order for these trains to go faster than 160 kilometers an hour. Because I remember on the Hamburg to Hanover route in Train Simulator, there are a lot of sections where you can get the ICE trains up to 200 kilometers an hour. Although on that route, I think they use the same track as conventional trains. And I think in that instance, those conventional trains are limited to 160 kilometers an hour, which is equal to about 100 miles an hour, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, I'm slowing down much sooner than I thought I would. So I guess we'll just have to crawl up to the stop marker. Because I do always, although it might seem like a bit obsessive, me being a bit obsessive, I do try to stop in the right place as often as I can. If I end up missing the stopping point, so be it. This is a bizarre feature, this ticket validator. That thing could do an impression of a very weak smoke alarm. I don't get what, I mean, obviously it makes sense to have this asset modelled here in the game as like a bit of scenery, but I don't get why they've got this feature where you can just go there and validate your ticket. I mean, I get that it's presumably meant just for immersion and what have you, but at the same time, like, I don't understand why it's there, because it doesn't really add much, if anything, to the overall experience of... What the hell? That is weird, seeing passengers glitch through the doors like that. Jim Morrison would be pissed. And the next stop is Nuenchritz. Not obviously. I know I haven't pronounced that right. Yes, I think I will have to either restart the game or computer before I try recording any other journeys today. And yeah, without me, I didn't notice it earlier, but this line that's just left the main, that's just curved off to it from my right. That's the single track section that goes up to Grossenhain, although I'm pretty sure in real life it actually continues on to a place called Cottbus. Although I think the full name of the station at Grossenhain is Grossenhain Cottbusser Bahnhof. I think that's what it says on the signs, at least. The services that go up that line are, I think it's just RE15, RE18, and RB31. So you'll pretty much only see just the Talent 2s and the occasional locomotive hauled services on that section. Kind of wish that the branch continued like past Grossenhain and all the way onto Cottbus itself, because I think it's either it's RE18. I think that's the service from Dresden to Dresden Hauptbahnhof. So I think it should have been, well, that little branch should have been extended, because then we'd have another full service. Because as it stands now, I don't think there are any full, like complete, like 100% complete routes or services simulated on this route. although saying that, I remember that I think with the Dresden to Chemnitz routes that Dovetail are working on, which obviously hasn't been released yet, I'd be making videos on it if it had been released. Is that the fast lines on the right there? Yeah, I think it is. And with that Dresden to Chemnitz, if memory serves, that route will include the entirety of the S-Bahn Dresden S3 line, which is Dresden Hauptbahnhof to Freiburg. And the other notable thing about that route is that it will include, the Dovetail have already advertised and shown off, like, in development screenshots to prove that the Dresden to Chemnitz will include the DB BR442, which is fairly notable, as that'll be the first German DMU that we've had in TSW. DMU, of course, meaning diesel multiple unit. And not only will it be the first German DMU in the game, but it'll also be the first tilting train we've had in TSW. And upon discovering that fact, I remember I went about a week ago, or however long ago it was, I actually made a post on a suggestion thread for one of Dovetail's, one of the Dovetail Live forums, suggesting that they should add the British Rail APTE in the game. Although I honestly think, despite the fact that I like the APTE mainly for its technological developments and what it managed to achieve, I still think that train, it looks ugly as sin, to be brutally honest. I mean, the cab windscreen, the tiny windscreen, is this a disused station? It's a disused station. I never noticed that. I think once I've finished with this run, I might have to go and find out what the station is. There's the Nuenchritz chemical plant off to the left. And yes, I got distracted by that disused station, and now I don't know what. Now I can't remember what I was just talking about. Wouldn't be the first time, unfortunately. Right, not too far off from Nuenchritz now, and I do say, if memory serves, this is another pretty basic station, just like Weinboehla. Should be able to, frame rate will pick up again. Of course, I think I remember that when you're driving like what I've learned about braking distances and almost, I guess, stopping patterns for German trains was mainly from experiences with driving the BR423 on Hauptstrecke München to Augsburg. There's another pair of Talent 2s. I dare say those units that we just passed will probably be on the RE50 service heading back to Dresden. You know, as I was saying, what I've learned about braking distances and almost like a pattern, as it were, with these German trains mainly comes from experience with the BR423 on Hauptstrecke München to Augsburg. Because what I've learned with these sorts of trains is that with units that have good brakes, like to an extent the BR423 and also the Talent 2 and BR422, is to try and approach the platforms no faster than 65 or 70 kilometres an hour, and then on frame rate, silly tosser. You have to try and enter the platform no faster than 70 kilometres an hour, and try to make sure you're down to about 40 when you're about 100 meters from the stopping point, and then try to be doing about ideally less than 10 kilometers an hour when you're when you're just coming up to when you're only a few meters from the stopping point. Doesn't always work, of course, because sometimes I forget. It's a similar I use a similar method to driving like when I drive like American or British trains, even though obviously those routes use imperial units, and of course Germany always uses metric. Actually, come to think of it, they only use metric. Right, so we just left Nuenchritz, and the next station is Glaubitz. What does that B short for? It's like Bahnhof? So I'm not sure why it's got Riesa in its name when technically it's not actually in the town. But that's the other thing. I'm pretty sure the station in Riesa that we see on this route is the only station in the town of Riesa. And that honestly is weird to me, because I'm just so used to there being several different stations all in one specific town, like obviously with Berlin, I guess of course Frankfurt, but obviously there are obviously smaller towns in Germany. Let me just slow down. Of course, that section from Nuenchritz actually went by a lot faster than I thought it would. I guess it's a combination of the Talent 2 easily being able to do 120 kilometres an hour and of course how quickly this thing can accelerate. And yeah, of course now I see it and now I remember it. Glaubitz is a station with staggered platforms. If memory serves, I think I've only been to one station in real life that's got staggered platforms, and that's Redwood, which is one of the stations on the commuter rail network in Wellington, which, if you don't know, is the capital city of New Zealand. And Wellington's got a very long history with commuter trains. I mean, they first got electric trains in 1938, I think. And of course, most of the suburban services are still run by electric trains today, although obviously not the originals from 1937. As for the Talent 2s, I'm pretty sure they first appeared in 2008. But no, with Redwood, that station has staggered platforms because of the presence of the crossing, which is right in the middle, or technically right in the middle of the station. And from what I understand, the reason why Redwood station has staggered platforms, I'm pretty sure it is to do with the crossing and making sure that the crossing only stays active for the one train. Like, it doesn't have to activate early, because like if both because the northbound platform at Redwood is on the northern side of the crossing and the southbound platform is on the southbound side, which makes sense. But if both platforms were on the same side of the crossing, I think that would mean that one train, like a train going south, would perhaps have to wait. I've just inadvertently confused myself. Yeah, I think it is to do with just making sure that the crossing does not, or to try and reduce the amount of time the crossing stays active for. So I think it would, I would assume it's set up so that, because I think if both platforms are on the same side of the crossing, my guess is that the crossing would activate early, like before the train had even pulled into the platform, and would therefore hold up traffic it would therefore hold up traffic for an unnecessarily long time. So I'm guessing the idea is that because obviously in Redwood's case, whichever direction the trains are going, if they're stopping there, once they've cleared the crossing will just essentially deactivate, and the cars and trucks can go through again. I almost like have a pretty bad memory of Redwood because where are we going at this junction? Because in July 2020 I ended up spending far too long at that station. It must have been something like 2 hours. And yeah, suffice to say, I don't really fancy spending that much time at any railway station again. Unless it's Wellington itself, although saying that, I'd probably end up being overwhelmed with the sheer number of trains coming and going. Because Wellington, despite the fact that it's not the biggest city in the country, I think it does pretty much have the busiest, well, certainly one of the two busiest railway stations. I think probably the close contender for the title of busiest station in New Zealand is probably Britomart in Auckland. Especially when those commuter services there are like every 10 minutes during the peak period. Although saying that, the Onehunga services are, I think they can only be every half hour because of the single track Onehunga branch. And yeah, that whole run this whole run up from Dresden has actually gone by a lot faster than I thought it would. Kind of like what I did the other day with that run from Cologne to Aachen. No, I think it's about to cross the River Elbe on the approach to Riesa. I think if we're lucky, we might see a little diesel shunter stabled here. In fact, I can just about see it there on the far left. I can't help thinking that some of the scenery on these river, like some of the detailing on those riverbanks, should be improved. Because as it stands now, it looks quite plain and almost unfinished. A bit like a lot of the scenery I've seen on the Clinchfield Railroad. No, there's a water column. That's weird. I wonder why they've still got that old water column there when you still haven't got steam locomotives in the game. Although got a corny achievement. I don't know what the points of those achievements are, to be honest. And of course, unfortunately this is where the route in the game, or the in-game route, ends. And in real life, this service would continue on to Leipzig. Yes, I really do wish that this was Dresden to Leipzig and not just Dresden to Riesa. And we're on time. Let's see what it's up to. I'll try to get one last screenshot whilst it's still on my mind. So yeah, this has been a run in TSW2 from Dresden Hauptbahnhof to Riesa with the Deutsche Bahn BR442 or Talent 2. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope to do more of these sorts of videos in the future. Yeah, stay tuned. Oh, sorry, not stay. Well, you can stay tuned if you like. But no, yeah, take care everyone, and have a good Christmas and New Year's.